I'm here with Joan Amble as part of the Mind the Gap blog series. Joan spent most of her career in financial services, and she's now currently serving on several boards. And today, we're going to talk about the importance of understanding the culture in which you're operating. So Joan, thank you for joining us today. And we had a great discussion earlier about the importance of understanding the culture as you're trying to progress in your career. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's interesting because I had a circumstance actually later in my career where this became so imperative to understand. I had just left a company, a great company, that I later learned was tagged as being active aggressive. And I joined a company that they tagged themselves as being passive aggressive. And so I learned that the leadership style that I had, not just the model, but the style that worked in the first company was not going to work in the second company. And unfortunately, I found that out by not reading my peers and the influencers in the right way. So you have to understand how people will hear your message and how you have to convey your message.
Right. And so if you're trying to progress in your career, it's important that you convey those messages to various people in the organization, whether they be your mentors, your sponsors, or just the leadership team. There's a lot of moments where you're communicating your messages, right?
There clearly are. And it's interesting, too. I also learned that part of a corporate culture, which you have to understand, is whether it's one that really draws significantly off of relationships. And I could never understand why, when I started with this new company at kind of a high level, I was told to meet with, I remember I was literally told to meet with 60 different people to have meet and greets to get to know them. And I went back to my boss and said, is this all you do is drink coffee all day? And what I learned, and I talked with this one gentleman that ran the risk committee, and what he said is, you have to understand, Joan, that the first time you meet with somebody, you don't want to be bringing up an issue that needs to be challenged or changed. You want to have already had the conversation where the person knows you and they trust you, and they don't have this baggage in the back of the mind of, does she have an agenda? And it just clicked with me. It's like, I get it. It's all about trust. And I drank a lot of coffee, and actually I kept going through that list literally the entire time I was with that company. I wish I had known that as a young, growing up staff person when I first started, because those relationships just, the relationships and the bond you get and the way you interpret people, because everybody responds to the way you speak in a very different way.
Right. Words matter. How you deliver the message matters. Even your body language matters. And so when you think about the top tips for women as they're approaching perhaps a new opportunity or even just a new reporting structure, but it's a different culture for them, what would be some of the tips you'd share?
I'll share with you some tips that were given to me. First thing they said was, when you're in a meeting, observe the power brokers. It's not necessarily the person who talks the most or talks the loudest, but the person that people listen to, the influencer, and observe how other people react. So I'd say, observe your audience. And I remember the other thing I learned was, the first time you're going to meet with somebody, particularly, and actually it doesn't even need to be a senior person, it's good to talk to other people that know that person well and say, can you give me some tips? How do they like things to work? Because some people want you to be very quick. Some people want to have a 5-minute, how do you do? You need to inquire and do your homework. And the third thing I've learned is, know what your points are going to be. And keep your points short and stay on point and don't wander.
Right. So be prepared. So know your points, be prepared, understand the culture. And I would say be authentic through all of it.
Absolutely.
If you're not your authentic self, then no matter how you operate in any culture, it's not going to come across well.
That's right. The other thing I should have mentioned, body language of the woman. I have mentored I remember this from my mother. It was stand up straight, walk tall. That is so important. I know when I work with women, it's say it with confidence, because if you're not confident about it and you're not articulate, you're going to scare the other person. Why would they buy into it? So how they sit, how they present themselves, and actually the voice that they use.
Yeah. Well, from now on, I'm going to sit up more straight, and thank you for that, those tips and this conversation. Really appreciate your time, Joan.
Thank you.